What is going on, guys? It's your boy here again, Dean, and I'm finally getting my BPA tier list. Uh, Same thing as always. Tier 1 is decks that you can expect to bring to a tournament, do extremely well with. Tier 2, maybe decks that take a little more finesse, a little bit more matchup knowledge, but at times can even be better than the Tier 1 decks, I believe, especially if you're like a really good player. Tier 3 is the decks that you got to be lucky, you got to dodge a lot of bad matchups. Maybe the consistency is not there, and locals is the deck is it's not good. It's not good. With that in mind, let's get into the tier list. We have a little bit of results to look at, and I don't fully agree with some of the Japanese stuff, and we'll kind of get into that. So first up is Puppets. This is the mono of the format. This deck is it mono? It's definitely better than mono. Mono was, the more I played that last format, the worse I thought mono was for a good player to be picking. Not that it can't win tournaments, it definitely did, but it was a huge percentage of the room. Puppets seems like it's the similar thing. If a bunch of people bring it, one person runs really hot, that's all you really need. Its conversion is, I mean, we've had we had 3 very small tournaments this week. I don't think Puppets did okay. It did okay, but it didn't do insane. It definitely didn't feel like it was the best deck in the format. But I'm gonna put it in tier 1. It's a deck that when it pops off, maybe I need more reps on it. It felt like some of the hands were very bricky, but if you got to do the big combo is pretty good, and it's got some it's got a little bit of leeway. My problem with this deck is every time I play the Puppets, it feels like you're required to have had a very custom hand and your opponent to have not been hitting you all too much, if that makes sense. I know I've seen Roach and I've seen a couple other things, but the more cards you put in that aren't game plan, the worse your game plan is. I'm not 100% certain. I need to actually playtest this one more. I'm gonna side on the caution. This is tier 1 at the moment to me because the board is crazy. It might be a tier 2 deck though, just because your removal options in the early game seem very mid, and then if you haven't removed the board, it feels like you can get aggroed out pretty easily. But I'm gonna side with caution, and I'm gonna put this thing in tier 1. The turn 5 and 6 push is pretty impressive, but anything the turn 1 to 4 looks pretty dog shit. it looks pretty bad. It looks pretty bad. I've not been impressed by it in the early game. I've been impressed with it in the mid game, but sometimes single cards can hit it, and then it's 50-50 if it still has gas. So, but we're gonna put it tier 1, even if its performance so far has not really told us that maybe too much. Amulet Haven. Damn, this deck is sick. This deck is so fucking sick. This deck. Do people think Lyshina's real? That's my one question. Lyshina's not bad, but is Lyshina real? Because this deck can never beat Lyshina. That I know of, and the deck actually plays. You can beat 2 Cost Abyss with this pretty easily. I'm gonna put this deck in tier 1. I'm putting Amulet Haven. Hot take: I like Alexiel. Number 2, I like a lot of the things the deck has. Themis for Puppets means that the Orcus board is never enough. They have to select for Noah, and Noah requires a lot of things. And if you're on the, oh god. Timmy Chandler called this the Space Needle. Whatever the new 2-drop spell is, that it can kill 2 Victorias. If you're on that, you should be able to beat Puppets on the big push turn. When they do the Noah, if they do a Noah push with Victorias, you should be able to kill those. Alexia lets you heal out of range of 2 cost. You have amulets to prevent 2 costs from ever completely hand ripping you. The mirror is a double loss, I think. I don't actually know. The problem with this thing in tier 1 is I don't know how the mirror goes. You do have some. I don't even know what your bad matchups are. This deck's actually kind of sick. This deck is like actually really sick. I'm putting this thing in tier 1. Fuck everyone. You're wrong if you don't agree with me. I'll prove it maybe. I'm not sure what I'm bringing to Toronto yet, but this one is it's on my radar. It's on my radar. It's a pretty sick deck. Yeah, Alexiel's like a powerhouse of a card, and then you get to just like banish like your opponent's entire board, play control, tempo them out, win. Good deck. Good deck. Oh, Valdain, he was tier 1 in my heart near the end. That last format, he was really good. How does he beat puppets? How does he ever beat a puppet board? Is puppets good? This is like tier 2 if like puppets isn't good. This destroys Alexiel. This destroys Laica. This destroys 2 cost. Damn, is this deck tier 1? I don't know. I don't know if it beats puppets. That's the only problem. I haven't tested this thing into puppets. I think that that's the real question. If it can't beat puppets, it probably loses. Because Valdain's only real problem is just not being able to clear the board early enough. And that's like the problem. But like, I don't think that puppets can threaten you enough in the early game. But I'm going to err on the side of caution and say maybe Valdain's tier 2, but he might be tier 1, actually. If you decide to bring Valdain to a locals, you know, the tournament, this deck can probably just, like, kill your opponent. Could destroy, like, some of these more control-y decks, and then as long as you don't get got by puppets, you're probably fine, I think. As I'm, like, thinking this format's a lot of slower decks that, like, definitely heal a lot more and, like, play for a much later game. The real problem with Valdain, though, is you don't have a lot of heal. So, if you're letting this deck go on for too long, you might just die to the Rose Queen because of the big push, because you don't have enough removal. You might be able to burn them out. Like, you don't really care as much about the hand rip. I don't know. It might be here. No, I'm gonna put in tier 2. I haven't tested it into 2 costs. I think on paper it should be fine-ish. And the deck definitely has like some good matchups into some of the more toxic stuff in the format. Natura Sword, hey, guess what? I hated this deck last format. I fucking hate this deck this format too. It's even worse. Less options to clear a puppet board. Can you ever beat this? Can Natura Sword ever beat Amulet Haven? Probably not. I just don't like this deck. I think that the power cards in this deck are cards that are off trait, and that's my problem with it. Baleon can't see the good cards outside of Miss Leena, and single card pushes are not. They're even like worse this format. Like, I just think that like, across the board, your matchup spread is worse. Like, it's like probably here or like here if I'm being honest, but like, I gotta keep up the bit, bro. I gotta keep up the bit. I did not like this deck. I don't even think the deck is that bad. I just think that like. The cards that you need to find aren't the cards that you get to see consistently. And so you're, like, forced to have these exploitable turns. Yeah, fuck it. This is my tier list. You're wrong. Storm, Ward, Haven. Wow, this deck is okay. I mean, you get to, like, aggro some people out, and then Ector gives you 8 reach in the late game with, like, a medium-sized board. Is that good enough? That's the good question, ain't it? Do you think that this deck has enough reach to actually get you there? 8. Got some, like, aggro stuff, but, like, if you don't see the aggro, it's, like, all decks, like, very tempo heavy. You gotta see, like, the right curve. There's not, like, missing curve, like, instantly kind of, like, loses you the game. More so than other decks. A little bit less selectivity than other decks, I think. Like 2 or 3. I just don't think that this has like the inevitability of like some things like Valdain. If it like sees a control deck, it like always wins. Should always win, just because like it has so much passive damage. This is a deck that's like trying to chip out your opponent. A little bit more reliant on curve. Definitely good. Probably closer to tier 2. I just like you're getting like you're trying to tempo this deck out, and so you better have had like a hand that's. I mean, you should have had a hand. It's aggressive enough to try to like tempo this deck out, so that they have to trade like half of their Anastasia board. And then what is the other one? Like 2 costs? I guess you like 2 costs is like 50-50 if you can like aggro them out. Like Roll 9 might be able to like 3 for 1 you randomly, and then like you kind of explode. So I'm just gonna put this in tier 3 to side with caution. I don't think this is the best deck. I don't think this is a bad deck. I think you can do like decently with it. I just don't think it's like the most consistent or it has like the best matchup spread. Latica, I'm told Latica's still good. I don't think so. I think that Lysina is a real deck that will be in bracket nowadays, and I think that Amulet Haven is another deck that might be in bracket. You have a decent puppet matchup. I think that 2 costs could randomly lose you the game by ripping a key card out of your hand. But Latica does keep a big hand, so maybe that's not as likely as I think. I'm going to put it in tier 2. I think Latica's still okay. But I think this deck is like lower end of tier 2 because it's like it depends on what your matchups for the day were. If you see some garbage, you probably are like horrifically lost. Because yeah, Lysina is like top of tier 2. This deck is, it might even be tier 1. This deck's like really gross. The new cards, we're gonna put in tier 1. We're gonna put Lysina in tier 1. This deck is really gross nowadays. I mean, like if you can't aggro them out, if you cannot aggro Lysina out by turn 5 or 6, you need to immediately pivot to like a deck out strategy. Because like you either need like Amulet Destruction on like Ramp Dragon, which I wish I would have put on this fucking tier list. I didn't put it there. I'm sorry. Or you need, you're not winning this matchup if it goes to turn 6. I'm just gonna be honest with you. You need to like never put a card on the board. If you're playing Rose Queen, you just like don't put cards on the board anymore. You try to like game them over like 2 20 damage turns. The more cards you put on the board, the worse things get for you. So yeah, you have like a very small window to try to like get them got. Like you need to like go first against them every single time and then just like shove their shit in. And if you fail to shove their shit in by like 6, if like the Lysina comes down and like a turn is passed, they have both the amulets on the board, you've probably lost the game. The game is already over. It might take 5-8 more turns, but the game is over. You've lost unless you like don't put cards on the board and then you kind of get them. Deck is unbelievable. It's unbelievably toxic. I'm hoping that it's not going to show up in high quantities, but yeah, this is a very toxic deck that I mean it can win off of just like seeing the right matchups. Like it has like actually like 100-0 matchups. That's like the more frustrating thing about it is it's like they put down the amulets and the game can like instantly be over if you don't have the right deck for it. And it has like some of those matchups that can just happen, and then like even like things like puppets it can beat because of puppets is like very combo reliant, and sometimes they have to take an extra turn or 2 to get the combo, and if they take an extra turn or 2, you've like instantly won the matchup as well. There's just literally no hope for them at all. You have way too much removal, you have way too much healing. I mean, you could even eat like an Anastasia board and still fucking be alive if you have to. But like the deck is, it's gross. It's something. Anyway, Rose Queen, this deck kind of sucks. I don't like this deck at all after playing it. But is it going to show up in high numbers? It didn't show up at all in Tampa, I'm told. I think if you're playing a control deck, it's decent-ish, kind of. It feels shit, dude. The hand rip stuff. Okay. The hand rip stuff is awful. I've tried the hand rip stuff. How the hell do you get Roll Nigh Engrave? How the hell, like, so Sonata like Roll Nigh combo is. This is like a deck for other people. This ain't a deck for me, I'll tell you that much. Is this tier 1 though? I'm putting this thing in tier 2. I don't like it. It's like if you see Arbiter and like you've got the Roll Nigh Engrave and you see all these cards on curve, like the deck's kind of cool, but otherwise your deck is filled with like a lot of shit that doesn't do a whole lot. There's like Do Blame to kill a couple cards. There's like Roll Nigh. And then your opponent puts down like a card that's like a 5/5 and you lose. So I'm not that high on 2-cost Abyss. I think that it's not like the worst pick for a regional, and if you get into like some of the slower matchups, you've got it. Your board clear being Arbiter is insane, but this community multiple times has proven to me that I'm wrong. So yeah, there's like people, they'll just bring this deck and they'll say my board clear is Arbiter. I'm just gonna fucking mill 5/2 drops off of it. And I mean they can they can do that in the games that matter, and then they get to win. Like, it's like it depends on like what the meta's like and what they're fighting, right? I think this deck can, if this deck gets breathing room, it can be like pretty good. But this deck is a little awkward, and I think it's less good than Japan wanted us to believe after having played it some. So I'm just putting it here. I'm not like the highest on it, but it could be like tier 1 if like, I don't know, if I find the list that I think is good, but it just feels, I almost want to put this in like tier 3. This one's like fucking worse than, this thing is kind of horrendous at times. Oh, dude, the Fairy Forest. Wow, why are you not playing puppets? Like, if you're going to be playing a deck that's all inning, play the one that draws cards. I'm just saying. Earthright. Yeah, this is like locals tier. I don't know until we get the new support. You've got like a couple play lines that are good. It's very tempo focused, but I know you know there's Dom out there and he's gonna say I'm wrong. It's like tier 2. But I'm not the highest on Earthright, and I really don't want to be playtesting it, and I just don't think that they have the cards to keep up with all the top decks, nor the defensive options to keep up with the top decks. But maybe I'm wrong, and there's not actually defense that's needed, because you just tempo puppets out, and then they lose. I don't know. Does this deck beat Laica? That's the other question. If it beats Laica, it might be tier 1. I gotta get the stats on that. Mono is Mono good? No, Mono's like fucking bad. I didn't like Mono last format because you had to have like an insanely high roll hand to win, and there's like a lot more controlled decks that are able to just keep you locked down, and you don't have the good defensive tools to deal with the Anastasia board. So if puppets can get to their board faster than you can get, or puppets can get to their board more consistently than you can get to yours, and you can out the puppet board, and puppets can sometimes play like a combination of cards that'd be able to break your board. So I think you're just like in a worse spot here. And yeah, junk is better than assembly droid, and that's funny. So Hunter, Hostage, Forest. This deck, can this deck beat Laica? Probably not. Can this deck beat puppets? Probably not. They have Nature's Guidance plus push plus Anastasia. I mean, it might be able to beat puppets. Can it beat 2 cost? Hostage? Can Hostage beat 2 costs? Maybe. And a big elephant? No, they got hand ripped too much. Bottom of tier 2. Funny deck. You get to play hostage cards. I know I have Lamaga instead of Azudia. Or Azudia is not even played either. They just play like the amulets, and then they like reduce your cost to your attack to 0. They sit there healing, and they hit you with an elephant a couple times, and you die. It's just like a deck that if your opponent knows how to play against it, there's like a lot of, they just like don't put cards on the board. And we're actually in a format where people can afford to not put like that many cards on the board. It's like puppets will like Anastasia you, and then they'll just like put all the cards on the board at the same time, and then there's like not enough room for you to actually stop the puppets from going off. Amulet Haven doesn't care. Laica doesn't care. Rose Queen can just choose not to play the cards. I mean, their cards suck anyway, so they just save them all for like a big Rose Queen turn, and they kill you with that. Valdain doesn't care. Even Laica doesn't care, so it's like, I guess they care if you like Mark of the Sixth then, but yeah, I'm not like too high on like Hunter Forest. I think it's a funny deck. It's definitely a cool one, but the matchups just aren't really there for it. But like the matchups against a good player, if you just like play someone, they start playing cards down, like they instantly lose the matchup. I think that's really funny. So this is like the shitter stomper in bracket. Kuan. You get worse every set. You have worse matchups. You can beat Laica. You can beat puppets if they like open slightly poorly. You can beat 2 cost because they accelerate your game plan if they don't hit the right cards. And honestly, you go off before Rose Queen comes down. Are you tier 1 or are you tier 2? Somewhere in tier 2. I can't put it in tier 1. I can't put it in tier 1 because how do you beat puppets? How do you Crimson Meteor Storm on 5 consistently, I guess is the question. Or if you go first, you get to go first. Do you have turn 6 Crimson Meteor Storm? Is that good enough? The question is that even good enough? I saw like a 9/9 Sakuna hit me one game, and it's like Crimson Meteor Storm's not even good enough there. So I just, oh man, I want to like Kuan. I want to like Kuan a lot. But I don't know if his time is now. I think he's tier 2. I think you can bring him. You can have a really good day, and you can beat some of these like more toxic decks in the top tables. Thief Sword. I am high on this deck, and I think you can include Barbarossa and the sword, the Suzaku spell, and you can deck out Lysina. You can deck out Amulet Haven. Roland is a really fucking good card, guys. 2 cost is... You can aggro 2 cost. You can aggro like half of these decks out, and then you can also play control. And your deck pivots, and you have like a little... You have enough draw power and removal. Because it's not like you're like filled with a bunch of shitty aggro cards. It's you're filled with like a couple, and if you see them in the like the puppet matchup, you can like kill puppets before they do anything. And then like at the same time, because you're only on a couple, you have like the late game tools to deal with Lysina. Because you just sit there like milling them out using Octress, healing up. And then you have the Panther Warrior to you can just deck Lysina out. It's fucking sick. Their deck sucks. I'm putting this one in 2 because I think that like including the stuff to make the puppet matchup better makes your deck a little bit worse. But Thief Sword is a really good pick this format. It's a really good pick. I think this deck is insane. I've been trying like triple Roland build with like double Durandale. Durandale's a really good card for getting to play like control into like these control decks that I think are just unbelievably toxic to play against. Being able to pivot your game plan, because like before it was like Thief, you're playing it, you didn't have enough mill. You just didn't have a good enough control cards was the real problem. You didn't like Roland being able, if you see all 3 Rolands in a game, which with Aether of the Warrior Wing, you should be able to see all 3 pretty easily. Oh, that's an additional 9 health, which gives you, assuming that they like all die the exact turn that they're played, which is enough to help you against the slow control decks that otherwise you wouldn't have the time to deck out. But now the 9 extra health, it really fucking matters. It really matters a lot. And then you're able to just, like Octress Mill, steal stuff, Panther Warrior, and then you can like kind of smack them a little bit. But like the goal is not to kill them, because these decks will heal out of your lethal range. You will not be able to kill them, and you have to just kind of pivot strategies. But it can do it, and I think that's very powerful. Disdain, I hate this deck. I think this deck is bricky as hell. I think that the Galmu is not a good enough card. You can like play it. You can bring back the Servant. You've got a bunch of draw. Everything requires multiple cards on board, which means that if you fight 2 cost, hand rip is even more crippling. I just don't think that Galmu wins the game. That's my real problem with it. I don't think that Galmu wins a game by herself. I don't think that she puts up boards that are big enough. I don't think that she draws enough cards. I'm not a big fan of this deck. I know that's a lot of people are high on this. I think the reason that we saw a lot of Galmu from Japan is that Galmu is a popular character in digital. She's just like a pop. She's got the funny voice lines. She's hot. I just don't think that she is a good deck. I don't think that she has the tempo necessary to actually play the game well, especially against like any of this other stuff in there. She can like burn out a couple of the control decks, and she's got the claw for the puppets. But other than that, it's like you need like all of these cards, and then you just get like hand rip, or the control deck they just play better than you get to play, and then you lose. So I'm like not high on this deck at all. I think that there are better decks like PDK. PDK is insane. This deck might be tier 1. This deck might be tier 1. It's like Sword though. I'm a little hesitant to like call it tier 1. I've been playing this a lot actually, and I am pretty damn high on this one as well. Do I put PDK in tier 1? We could use a 4th tier 1. We're going to put PDK in there. Good matchups across the board. The new cards really help PDK a lot. There's a lot. There's a lot more aggressive options. There's like Ozzy Dahaka to end the game. It's got gas from turn 1. It doesn't need that many cards to get going, and the cards that you play down usually replace themselves. So this deck is definitely good, and I think it has decent matchups across all of the top decks in tiers 1 and 2, which are kind of like in the same, because before people are like, oh dude, Warhaven sucks, I'm not doing with it, but the 2 costs, yeah, you know, fuck, they're the same. They're the same. Next up, Lamonia Machina Haven. Bring that shit to locals. That deck sucks. That deck underperformed last format. I wanted to like it a lot. I thought it was very good with like the aggression, but at the end of the day, it was there was too many holes in the deck that I wasn't willing to admit. And I don't think that the holes have gotten patched. Like, we got 0 new Machina cards. Okay, well, sorry, your deck didn't get support, and it wasn't that good last set. It's not good this set. Oh, Neptibus, this is slots. Is this good enough to bring? Is slots good enough to bring? Sure, we'll put it in tier 3. It can win. It's funny. That's just a funny deck. But yeah, I think that's really where my headspace is for this format so far. There's like tiers 1 and 2 are really close. Tier 3 is a lot further down, and locals is, I would never look at that for a tournament deck. Like, right, tier 3 is like, I don't think I would bring it ever myself. Tier 2 and 1 are like, they're pretty close. A little bit of a divide. So not every deck in either tier is like one that I would bring personally, but I think that they're all like solid picks. But if you like this tier list, smash that like button. If you did, let me know where I'm wrong. You know, a lot of people always like to tell me I'm wrong somewhere. Well, I'll see you at Toronto, and we'll see who's wrong. But until then, this is your boy Dean signing out.